C Dube is known for his important contribution to anthropology and sociology. It is he who introduced village studies to the study of Indian society. So let us discuss his career graph. One very striking thing about Dube is you can say he is born and brought up in the ambience of anthropology. And then he reached very early peak, like sports people or film actors, early peak. He finished his most important work before he reached 35 years. So how did this happen? His father was working in Chhattisgarh region as a manager in Jamindari, under Jamindari, as a British official. And Dube had primary education in those regions of Chhattisgarh where he had a distant acquaintance with the Adivasis. Means even as a child, he knew them. And then he started interacting during his intermediate first year with the Kamars. In his first year of intermediate college, he wrote on folk songs and folk tales of the region. From folklore, I moved to people and wrote about their customs and traditions. I came in contact with two tribal groups, the Kamar and Bunjia. They came to my father with petitions or in connection with court cases that he was hearing. I liked their shy smiles and their openness. I persuaded them to sing, to tell stories, and to talk about their life and problems. I was irretrievably being drawn into anthropology. Means he was interact with them in his first year, the college, intermediate college. And years later, he began his field work on the Kamar for his Ph.D. in 1944. This fieldwork was aided by his father's contacts. So he was exposed to the tribals, but he did not belong to that tribal culture. Because an interaction of officer's son versus the others, the natives or the tribals. So he worked on the Kamar. He stayed there and doing participant observation. He joined their fishing, hunting expeditions. He went on gathering too. He watched several stages of slash and burn. And there was one mistake he did. Dube says that he started collecting genealogies and census before developing proper rapport with them. And it was around Second World War time. And those people believed that he was trying to conscript them into the army. Though he could speak their dialect, he was an outsider. And then when he wanted to take photos, the Kamar had a belief that once photographed, something of life essence would be taken away from them. Okay. So Dube had to think of something to help the Kamar overcome their resistance. And then he thought of an interesting story. He told them, I am young, and when I go back, the British may recruit me forcibly. So I am hiding here. And if there is a dumb-witted girl, I will marry her. Never mind if she is ugly and has been deserted by her husband. They had burst of laughter. So later, he came to accept it. And the Kamar cooperated in his fieldwork. But what was the format he followed? He followed the format given by notes and queries. It is a standard format. And this is a very comprehensive index of various topics and the questions to be asked. So following that format, he did noting down, he did interviewing, did everything carefully, and because he had a very clear format to follow, it came out quite briefly. And also, Dube studied culture contact situation. For example, how they were being impacted by traders, moneylenders, and how they were being exploited. So much so that Elwin said this chapter called Problems of Tribal Adjustment should be read by all ministers of tribal welfare. Elwin, even otherwise, liked this monograph. He said, I commend Mr. Dube's work as of high excellence and as among the best by an Indian writer of recent times. Very good compliment. Elwin was around that region. He was an unofficial advisor. And the examiner to Dube was Haemendorf. Haemendorf also thought high of this book. A lucid and sympathetic description of the Kamars, a tribe hitherto practically unknown in anthropology. Okay. And it was during this phase of fieldwork, in one of his visits to back home, he married Leela, who would also become an anthropologist. And after the marriage, she accompanied Dube, and she could have intimate conversations with the woman of the Kamar. That also contributed to quality of the monograph. So notice the connections of Dube, connected to Elwin, Haemendorf, father being in an important position, and knowing the tribes from early childhood. And then he was already good at writing. He was writing about folklore. He had that taste for literature. So because of which he produced a high quality monograph. But then doing a monograph on a tribe is, though it is a high quality one, is a part of general pattern for anyone who wants to be an anthropologist. C Dube is no exception to that. But Dube's claim to fame happened not because of the work on the Kamar, though it is a very good quality, but something else. Okay, and what was that? The monograph on the Kamar was so good that he was offered a very important position in the Osmania University. So Dube was offered to come to replace Haemendorf at Osmania. Haemendorf was teaching at Osmania and he was about to go to UK. And Vice Chancellor asked Dube, who was at that time only 27 years old, to occupy the position of Haemendorf, who was a well-known anthropologist and who was at his 40s. So, for a young man of 27 years, it's a very high achievement. And some important event took place here. Dube planned to study some more tribes. That normally is the work of an anthropologist. But Vice Chancellor came up with a different proposal. He wanted an in-depth study of a village because he was interested in doing social service there. And the village chosen was Shamirpet. Okay. So it was a different proposal, an intensive study of village. And Vice Chancellor mobilized all his resources at his disposal. experts from arts, agriculture, veterinary, medicine, engineering, education. All of them were sent to that place. They stayed there for weeks, but on the whole, project went on for 1 year. And these departments from Osmania managed to get the cooperation of the villagers through their direct help. For example, medical unit helped them, veterinary unit helped them, agriculture. So because of which they became more cooperative, resulting in massive study. There was an intensive investigation of 120 families, 80 episodic and topical life histories, and 11 full biographies were collected. Village records were studied. Their diet, nutrition, animal care was studied. And finally, it came out to be 3,000 sheets of notes typed and classified. So, this is the first village which was surveyed intensively. This is called case study approach. And which had 3,000 sheets of information written on it. But the question is, how do you organize this data? How do you narrate a story around this? What is the theme of this work? For the work on the Kamar, he followed a standard format. But what should be done about this? There was no standard format. Dube says, my main difficulty was that I had no model for my study. The complexity of working on the caste system made everything so different and difficult. So, Dube was confronted with a problem which anthropologists were not focusing at that time. This is village, not tribe. So much of data, how do you organize? There is a caste system, there is political system. And then this village was changing. He collected physical, historical, demographic data. Okay. So, C Dube had these problems. And it was around that time, on invitation of Haemendorf, he went to UK. And there he made certain presentations on his work. And then he prepared a manuscript, and the manuscript was shown to Raymond Firth, given to Raymond Firth. And Firth asked him to meet him for his review. For a lunch at London School of Economics, where Firth was working. And Dube was pleased to see that on the top of the manuscript, Firth wrote, "First rate." Dube was happy. And because of high rating by Raymond Firth, and on his recommendation, Routletz published it. Okay. And then the book became an instant hit. Dube said that we cannot regard the Indian village community as a static, timeless, and changeless. Time and interplay of historical and sociological factors and forces have influenced the structure, organization, and ethos of these communities in many significant ways. So Dube, as in Kamar, is studying social change. And this book influenced later day village studies. Mandelbaum says this is the first book on a single village. This represents a shift from tribe to village in Indian anthropology, which means this is a part of a new trend, that is study of modern communities and not study of isolated groups somewhere else, which had been done traditionally by anthropology. And also, this study could help in rural development. And in fact, this book, published in 1955, came to be heavily used for teaching in various parts of the world to measure social change and role of technological factors in the study of social change. And this book turned out to be Dube's best. And he gave his best when he was only 33 years. So, unfortunately, it meant that he couldn't excel this work. Okay. Later, he wrote, he joined Cornell India project to study community development program in UP villages. It was a study of 2 villages consisting of 5,000 population. And out of this, another book was produced, India's Changing Villages, Human Factors in Community Development, 1958. And this didn't become very popular, but this is being used in administrative programs in Third World. Okay. And it is said that in the 1950s, Dube and Srinivas were showing the way for Indian anthropology. And after this, he continued to work, he continued to write some more books. For some time, he was a director at NICD, offering training programs for rural development, visited Afghanistan and Pakistan to know more about rural development programs in the context of nation building. Okay. So that was career of Dube in brief. Unrepeatedly, in his obituary, in the obituary of C Dube, has this to say: I can't think of any sociologist of my generation or the next who established so wide a reputation at such an early age. But then he left the university at a relatively young age and never to return to it as a teacher. He went more towards academic administration rather than anthropology as a profession. So Andrew says, despite his many achievements, Dube did not realize his full potential as a scholar. This was partly a failure of his generation, which perhaps overestimated the extent to which India needed services. But it also had something to do with his personality, which found it hard to cope with boredom or the routine of everyday academic pursuits. Andrew would lead a more exclusive life, which Dube always encouraged to change. So this is what C Dube's contribution to Indian anthropology.